great radio stations across the land, joepags.com, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, email. It's all right there, plus the live video feed. It's the Joe Pags Show. Glad to have you along for the ride. Really glad to have this guy back. It's the geologist, the author, the guy who knows all there is to know when it comes to climate change, or at least more than anybody else I know. It's Gregory Wrightstone. Greg, how are you?
Really good, really good. Busy in this time of COVID-19, staying busy, writing a new book.
Well, good. Now, we talked about the new book a little while ago, but you're still writing it, so it's not out yet. The one they should get is Inconvenient Facts, and they can get that at inconvenientfacts.xyz. Go there right now. Get this book. They fly off the shelves whenever you're on the program because people want that reference, a footnoted, well-researched reference where, you know, when Uncle Art comes over for whatever holiday it is and starts complaining about Trump sucks and the whole world's going to explode, they now have real evidence they could turn to. Plus, there's an app, right?
Yeah, there is an app, and it's still... We're downloading a bunch every week, and it's very powerful. You can have the inconvenient facts, all that information right in the palm of your hand.
I wanted to ask you about something that's happening right now. CNN is putting together some sort of a town hall or some sort of a get-together where experts on COVID-19 and coronavirus will get together and talk about it. Dr. Rand Paul, who's a doctor, he's a medical doctor, said he would like to be on the panel. They said that he didn't qualify, yet they added now 17-year-old prolific school skipper Greta Thunberg from Sweden. She's going to be on the coronavirus task force. Greg, any thoughts on that? Just on the surface, it sounds nuts to me.
Well, you know, when I saw it, I thought maybe it came from like the Babylon Bee or one of these
the Onion, yeah.
Sites. It boggles the imagination. And I had to read half of it until I was pretty convinced that they were serious. And I clicked on some of the links, and by God, they're going to have her as some kind of an expert. And what's interesting, Joe, we talked just a few minutes ago, the similarities, what they're claiming is that climate change has created COVID-19, and it's created interactions between animals and humans, and it's just the opposite. Actually, fossil fuels and energy is allowing us to stay away from animals and stay in our homes. But there are some really interesting correlations between COVID-19 and climate change. Just think about it. It wasn't that long ago, a month ago, 45 days ago, there was a consensus of experts that agreed on a model. Now we find that the model has overpredicted deaths, just as there's a so-called consensus of experts behind climate models that overpredict warming.
Well, how exacting is this, though, Greg? I want to jump in here. I grew up in South Florida, as you may or may not know. We would have hurricanes every season, and you saw the models. You keep hearing about the models. Then they call them the spaghetti models, and this line could go here, it could go over there, the trajectory could be over there. Nobody really knows what's going to happen. With a real storm, we can really see and watch come off the coast of Africa. Now, coronavirus, we didn't see it because China didn't tell anybody anything. The WHO hid it. Climate change, we don't really see it. We just have to believe Greta Thunberg. How good are these models? And who's making these models? Because you're right. I think Dr. Burke said it could be 2 million deaths in America. We're not going to be anywhere near that.
Well, and they're predicting now 8 degrees centigrade of warming, 5 degrees centigrade of warming. Well, it's only warmed, and that's by 2100, which is completely out of line with what we're seeing. And so these models we know that if we backfit the data from the models, that we know that the models are using overpredict warming 2.5 to 3 times too much.
Wow.
And that's what they're using to base all this expensive manipulation and the Green New Deal and the rest. And you know, what we've done right now is we've gone through a wonderful, well, it's not wonderful, it's a terrible experiment of what exactly the Green New Deal would do in terms of reducing carbon dioxide emissions, shutting down the economy. It'll be economically crippling, probably not as bad as this coronavirus shutdown, but even with this, with tremendous reductions of CO2, I keep an eye on the atmospheric CO2 levels, and it continues rising at the same rate, even though we've basically shut CO2 emissions down significantly. It keeps rising at the same rate. You'd expect to see at least a slowdown in the rate of increase of CO2. So there's probably something else going on other than just us burning fossil fuels. And the other thing that they have, Joe, is we've just wiped out all the money that they needed for their Green New Deal. There are estimates of $100 trillion over the first 10 years of what this policy would need just from the United States. We don't have that money anymore. We just don't.
And by the way, they try to include it in all the coronavirus relief, which is nuts. Is Gregory Wrightstone? Wrightstone is with a W, Wrightstone. Go and get his book, Inconvenient Facts. You can go to inconvenientfacts.xyz. We've been hearing about the worst drought in 1,200 years, the worst drought we've seen in more than a millennia. Maybe I'm missing something, or millennium. Maybe I'm missing something, but first of all, how would we know? I don't know how recorded history was back then, if they were measuring it with modern measuring tools, but you actually blow this out of the water with your commentary recently. What are your thoughts when people say things like this?
Well, I go right, when I saw that study, I first went to look at the data. And it turns out the data went from the year 2000 to the year 2018, but it was just published last week. And in this report, the study, they said it was the worst drought in 1,200 years. They called it a mega-drought, and it's continuing till today in 2020, and we're all going to die. But when you look, the drought ended at the beginning of 2019. January of 2020 was some of the lowest drought in the entire United States, and they were looking at the Southwest United States. There was zero drought at the EPA drought monitor, zero drought in that same area that they were claiming that this mega drought is continuing. And I went through a whole series of charts showing droughts are in decline, not escalating like they're saying. And also, the Southwest of the United States has been plagued by droughts throughout many, many centuries, thousands of years. And I include a chart there showing some horrific droughts in the past. There was one that lasted 200 years.
Wow.
It was probably in the 1200s. The Anasazi people of the Southwest, they built. It was a huge civilization that just disappeared during this drought. The Navajo call them the Anasazi, which means the ancient ones, because we really don't know anything about this people other than what's left of the buildings they've.
What's interesting is I also looked through that period, and the data shows that there were a lot of SUVs in the year 1200. So you've got to be very careful. All the cow farts and the SUVs and people eating red meat, that was probably the issue. So when you can blow it away with the data, which you always do, and that's why I want people to get Inconvenient Facts, inconvenientfacts.xyz is the website. When you can blow it away with the data, do people who are pushing this garbage, do they hate guys like you? Because, here you are telling us that the drought ended a year ago, and it was nowhere near as bad as it was 800 years ago. They I'm guessing, can't stand it, because people will generally take that in and say, well, it must be right. The people are saying that it's right.
Yeah, it's hard to fight. I mean, it's just so clear that what they're saying is just easily disproved, which I did. And you can see that at the website, inconvenientfacts.xyz, my latest. In fact, I've got both a video and a commentary at my blog, and I've got a whole series of new videos on YouTube. I'm calling it the Climate Chronicles.
Nice.
I did one on the drought. The one before that, we talked about what's called plate climatology, relating these really. Well, I'm a climate geek and a geology geek, so I find it fascinating.
Oh, it is. Well, it is fascinating. You know what happens every time you come on my show. People find it fascinating. They contact me immediately. What's the guy's name again? What's the book again? It's Inconvenient Facts. Go and get it. Let me ask you before we run out of time. Antarctica is melting fast, and it's all because of cow farts and SUVs, Greg. Obviously, right?
Well, it was, again, fascinating. 90% of Antarctica is either stable or increasing in ice. There's one part, the Antarctic Peninsula in Western Australia, that is losing ice, and that's that part where there's a rift zone, and there's a plume of magma coming up from the mantle. It's a heat source, so they're losing ice, but it's being lost from beneath.
Can anybody say that we are somehow because of human activity causing a volcano and magma?
Yes, it's one of the most active volcanic areas on Earth.
Right.
If it was climate change, it would be melting from above and down, not from underneath and up. And we see similar things in Greenland with these rift zones adding temperature. And it's really not been dealt with at all, this strong relationship between plate tectonics, heat flow, and climate change. It's fascinating.
I mean, for me, I've never thought that heating and warming a little bit was bad. And we've talked about this before. Our core temperature is what, 98.6? Why are we so worried about the temperature heating up 0.1 of a degree over the span of decades or even centuries? Why the freak out? Is it only about power and control, Greg?
It is. It's a climate of fear, and the book I'm working on right now deals with that. It's that what they need to do is stoke fear in the hearts of the people. We saw how powerful a force fear is, didn't we? Just with this COVID-19, we were all scared.
They shut us down in like 3 days. They scared us and shut us down with no information, with varying information depending on who you were listening to, but they were able to shut us down immediately.
So what they need to do is they're going to stoke everything that's unusual, anything that's odd, every hurricane that hits, every fire that erupts. There was a webinar. The people there were just like, they were rubbing their hands together in glee. Oh, it's going to be a bad hurricane season. Oh, wait till the fires start in California, man. What we need to do is blow it up. And everybody, no one realizes these are natural occurrences like hurricanes this year. I had a long conversation with Joe Bastardi, my favorite weatherman.
Cool guy.
And he talked about, back in March, he predicted that we're going to have an early hurricane season, and it's going to be above average in terms of numbers. And he's right. We just saw the first tropical depression going up the East Coast. It's going up there right now, offshore North Carolina. And there are certain things he looks at. It's not global warming related, but he says, he was talking to me, he says, I saw a very similar situation in, I think it was 1969 or whatever year it was. And he says, I think we're going to see the same pattern with hurricanes as what we saw during this period, and this period. And that's what he does. He takes past history, what I do with geologic temperature and climate, and then apply it to what we might expect to see going forward. But again, it's fascinating. Using science, facts, and data.
Imagine that. It's Gregory Wrightstone with a W. Go right now to inconvenientfacts.xyz, inconvenientfacts.xyz. And I'll urge you to do one thing. If you're somebody who believes this climate change stuff and the global warming stuff, and it's really happening, what about our children and Greta Thunberg with the how dare you? How dare you? If you believe all that, listen, God bless you. At least read the alternative. At least read something that's fact-based, footnoted, researched very well by a scientist, and then weigh it against what it is that you think you know. You're hearing a lot of anecdotal BS from the one side, and then you can also have facts on the other side where you can then make a really educated decision. Greg, I appreciate you. Let's do it again more often.
Let's do it.
All right, brother. We're back after this in the Joe Pag Show. Stay right here.